Hey, what's up everybody? Kyle here. So you might immediately notice that the video quality is quite a bit improved. I got a new camera. This is the Canon HFR 700. It's just a normal camcorder. But yeah, so hopefully the videos in the future that I take that are recorded with the camera will have at least a little bit higher quality, because this isn't exactly a very expensive camera, but it's still definitely an upgrade from my previous videos. Anyway, so it has been quite a long time since I've actually posted like a network update video, so I figured I might as well post a new one. This is for like mid-December 2016, basically the same day when the video was uploaded. So yeah, let's get started. Alright, so we'll start off with my computer. Now, I actually have removed all the 10 gig out of my network and put everything away because I got rid of the server, which I'll show you in a second. So, it's a pretty simple network now ever since I got rid of the server and the 10 gig stuff, but it's still a pretty interesting setup. So, over at my computers I have 3 monitors, the normal sort of computer setup. And I now have the computer underneath the table where it sits better and stuff, and it's propped up with a couple PVC pipes so fans on the bottom can breathe. But yeah, that's pretty simple. But now I've added this table, so we'll start off by going over the table. What we have first is the Mackie 1202. See if I can catch it up here. Mackie 1202 VLZ Pro. So I actually just got this mixer as a part of a production company that was bought out, that was kind of liquidating all their stuff. So they gave me a whole bunch of free equipment because it was their last day open and they needed to get as much stuff as they could gone. So they gave me that mixer. I think it was manufactured in 2009. So it's a very recent mixer. It has no buzz whatsoever, which is nice because my old mixer has had tons of buzz that it introduced into the audio and everything. So this mixer is definitely way better for what I'm using it for, which is basically all my computers, mix them together into my headphones. So yeah, anyway, this table is for my broadcast computer, which I use for a number of things. I pretty much just keep it here all the time, and when I need to have a video input that comes from like another room, I just run an HD SDI cable there and keep this computer here. But yeah, it's pretty simple. It's just a table with the broadcast computer. And over here is another free thing that I got. This is the M Audio, what is it? Mobile Pre-USB. Probably can't see the mobile on the very left, but yeah, this is a audio interface, so it has dual XLR in, but I'm actually using the 1/4" jack, the balanced jacks on it, out of the Mackie mixer. So yeah, and it's just one of the normal Acer monitors, Apple keyboard, mouse, and then the computer's behind here. That's actually pretty boring, really. It's just got the Blackmagic Intensity Pro 4K in it. So yeah, I'm going to try and keep this video short. Anyway, also the QSC amplifier is up on top of the shelf with a couple speakers so that I don't always have to use my headphones. And yeah, we'll move on to something else. Alright, so we'll start off at the top of my closet. So up on this shelf, this is the only shelf in the closet, I have all of the old boxes to like network gear. There's the camera box and some other various stuff. That's pretty much where I store everything that I get that's expensive. But on the very left here we have my Synology DS215 Plus. This is a 2-bay Synology that has 2 network ports and stuff. It's pretty okay. It's got like an ARM processor, so it's not too powerful, but it definitely does the job. That has 2 WD Red 1 terabytes in it, and they're in a RAID 1. It's technically like the Synology hybrid hybrid RAID or whatever, SHR, but it's basically a RAID 1. So that is used for the security cameras I have. I have 2 security cameras throughout like the place, one outside and one inside. And so that does surveillance station on a VLAN on the switch, and the other LAN port is used for just normal NAS things. So when I'm working on a project or something, I keep it all locally stored on this now. That way I can access it from all the different computers that I use. So down a little farther you can see I have the EdgeRouter Lite. It's got like 512 megabytes of RAM, it's a dual core. Pretty simple router, but it does have hardware acceleration, so I've actually done iPerf tests. It'll do full gigabit one way, and it'll do gigabit with like 800 megabits per second bidirectional tests. So it's a really high performance router for the price, which is $99. And yeah, so the WAN is the middle port, the bottom port, and the top port is running VLANs. So what the VLANs are the surveillance, a test network, which has a different IP range, 10.10 instead of 192.168. That way I don't get as many conflicts when I'm using like other routers connected to this. And it has the normal 192.168 VLAN. So that's the router. It's pretty simple. Down a little farther you can see my network switch, which is a TP-Link TL SG2424. So this is like a smart switch. It's got a web GUI and everything. It's got all the basic features like link aggregation and VLANs. It's got some advanced features, but mainly all I use is like VLANs. It's definitely overkill. Well, it's not definitely overkill, but it's pretty overkill for what I use it for, but I like it a lot. It was inexpensive. I think it cost like maybe $180 new. So yeah, it's been online for so long. I've had it for at least like 2 years now, I think. So yeah, I just got all my network ports connected to it. That's pretty simple on this wall-mounted shelf. So over to the right more, you can see my modem. That is a Motorola Aeris. Forget what modem it is. Yeah. So actually, we'll try and look at it. If I can get it. I couldn't see that, but I assume you guys could probably see that. So yeah, that's what modem it is. It's whatever Motorola's fastest modem to date is. It's supposed to do like 1.2 gigabits per second, but all I get is 400, so whatever. I have my Intel NUC, which I don't really use much. It just kind of runs. It has a web server on it, along with it runs an RTMP relay server and a couple other various services that I use. But pretty much everything is managed by either this EdgeRouter Lite or this Raspberry Pi. So what this Raspberry Pi is doing is it's running a Pi-hole DNS server, which is for basic ad blocking, and it also runs the UniFi controller for the network. Since I have 2 access points, it needs to always be online in order to handle the handoff of which client joins what access point. So yeah, that's pretty much what the Raspberry Pi does. It's a Raspberry Pi 2. Oh, and then this NUC has 8 gigabytes of RAM and a 64 gigabyte SSD. Just because where it came from, it was a company that does digital signage, so yeah, they need the overkill, especially since it's only a Celeron, so that's like a dual core, non-hyper-threaded CPU. So yeah, it's powerful enough for what I need it for, but that's pretty much everything up here. Down here, there's some power strips on the walls, and just various other power stuff. Over here you can see there is my UPS. That's a CyberPower UPS. I'm not sure what it is. It's probably 750 volt amps or whatever they're called, VA. But it does the trick, especially since I'm not running any real servers here. Everything is pretty low power. The most power that's used is this Synology, only because it has spinning disks in it. So yeah, I pull about maybe like, I think 60 watts around with all this stuff running. And so yeah, over here I have, on top of the old UPS, which takes a ton of power, I have this Netgear ReadyNAS. So this has dual WD greens in it. It just has one network port. It's a ReadyNAS 102, so I use this for backups and like storing my music library and video library, so not exactly crucial stuff. Which is why it has the WD greens in it, because I hadn't had spare WD greens and I had this spare, so I just set it up as a backup NAS. I don't really use it much, so yeah. Over to the right, I have my 10 gig switch, which I still have. I'm not sure the company I work with, I'm not sure they even remember that I have that. But I'm not really doing testing at the moment, which is why it's not out. And then I've pretty much just used the opening of the closet as a storage area, so just a whole bunch of random stuff, like an old audio rack and stuff. So yeah, if we back up a little bit, we can see the network rack. It's like a rolling rack with casters on it. So that's another thing I got out of the liquidation. Let me pull it out and then we will go over it more. I'll pull it out from the wall. Alright, so now that I've pulled the rack out, I'll show you the front of the rack first. So at the top you can see probably the Furman logo. That is a Furman power conditioner. So that's actually another one of the pieces that I got from the liquidation. It's a really nice power conditioner. They still sell for like 80 bucks on eBay, so that's nice. I'm working on getting replacement bulbs because something about these Furman power conditioners is that the bulbs in them always fail. And I've seen that in a lot of pro audio when I used to do a ton of pro audio stuff. Like all of our Furman power conditioners would have broken bulbs from the little pull-out knobs that come out that are dimmable. So yeah, I'm working on getting new bulbs that don't burn out, because it also, the few bulbs that I had burned out as soon as I tried to turn it on, so that sucks. But yeah, so I'm gonna try and find new bulbs. But that's pretty much the main power device that I have in there that powers everything in the rack. You can see it's pretty empty so far because I just had the equipment on hand that I put in there. So this is when we have our LAN event, which is called Hactic. It's in Los Angeles. So this is going to be the new Hactic rack, which I'm going to like bring around to Los Angeles when we have an event, and this is where all of our servers will be stored for that event. So yeah, there's the Furman on the top. Below that is a Dell PowerConnect 3448. It's a 48 port 10100 switch with 4 gigabit uplink ports, and 2 of them are SFP ports and the other 2 are gigabit just Ethernet ports. So I use the gigabit uplinks for, well, one of the gigabit uplinks, you can see the one Ethernet cable on the right. I use it for just doing an uplink, and then I've enabled PVLANs. So the thing about this rack is it's not fully configured, so even though I've enabled PVLANs on that, the pfSense VM that I'm running on the bottom server, which I'll show you in a second, hasn't been configured to not route. I need to make sure that pfSense server doesn't route connections through the boxes through the pfSense, because that defeats the purpose of the PVLANs on the switch. So yeah, that switch is actually pretty much a dumb switch. I don't configure it with an IP because it just stays on the main VLAN anyway all the time. That makes it the most secure, because when there's no IP address to access, how are you going to hack it during a LAN event? So yeah, that's where all of the normal computers plug into, and I think I'll keep it up there and then just run long Ethernet cables to wherever the desks are for distribution. Below that I have a patch panel. This is a Cat 6 patch panel that I got from a church I used to work with. They were pulling out a whole bunch of network gear, and this was probably like 3 years ago, back when Cat 6 was still pretty new. They were pulling out a whole bunch of like network cables to run new ones because some animals got to them and stuff. So they gave me that as a part of helping with them, which was pretty cool. And I finally found a use for it. It's been sitting in my closet for like forever, and so now I finally have a use for it, and it's going to stay in here. So you can see on the right all 6 ports are labeled. The other, like the first 6 ports, are actually disconnected right now because I don't have enough Ethernet. I don't have enough Ethernet connectors to terminate onto more cable, and I haven't had the time either, so those are going to be left alone for now. But the ones on the right, I will zoom in on, and we will explain some of the network structure of the of Hactic. So on those 6 patch panel ports on the right, you can see basically 3 sections. The one on the right is 2 ports where we can plug into WAN, and because I did this because I don't want to have to access the back of the rack all the time. I want to be able to basically close the back of the rack and only have to use the front of the rack in order to access all the ports. So I've given 2 ports per VLAN on the 2 ports per VLAN for this patch panel. So on the right, there's the WAN ports. Basically, one port plugs in, is bridged over to the pfSense box for a WAN connection, and it's just a VLAN on the switch, a separated VLAN. So if I have multiple WAN uplinks, I can plug them both in there, or if I have, say, I have to just tap into a WAN connection, that like a business WAN connection with multiple IP addresses, I can do that. So the original business router can still get internet while I also use a different static IP address on WAN to connect to the internet, because it's kind of annoying having to go through routers at the location, like people's NATs and stuff. So I like being directly connected to WAN. Anyway, that I just did 2 ports so that I can test and do whatever else. It's nice to have extra ports. Plus, it's a 48 port switch in the back, so that makes it easier. In the middle there, it's probably a little hard to see, but that says manage. So that's the management VLAN. That's where things like the Ethernet switch and the server, which I will show you in a second, are like listening on. So that's the only VLAN where you're supposed to be able to configure the pfSense box or the server. That's supposed to be the management VLAN, and all the other VLANs, like the main VLAN, isn't supposed to be able to access the server and stuff. Like I said before, I haven't fully configured it, so that isn't exactly restricted right now. You can still access everything, but I'm hoping to get all the configuration finished by in a few days. Anyway, so that's the management VLAN. That's pretty much just going to be for me and anybody who's working on setting up the network to be able to access all of the equipment securely. So on the left there, that's actually even more of a gibberish. That says broad with a period, so that stands for broadcasting. So a lot of these Hactic events, we actually do we've been doing some sort of broadcasting. I use the broadcasting computer, I bring it along with me, and we host like a Twitch stream because we have a VR setup. So we usually just stream VR over twitch.tv, and I guess I should post a link to the Twitch channel that we use. It's just my personal one for now. But yeah, so there's 2 ports there for the broadcasting VLAN, and basically what's special about that one is it's separated from everything else. So that's less potential for people to, malicious people to get in. And it also that's the only VLAN that has access to a virtual machine. And what the virtual machine does is it is an RTMP relay server, so it's just running Ubuntu 16.04, and it's just serving as an Ubuntu relay server. So anything broadcasting wise has its own VLAN. It's all separated. You don't have to worry about it or anything. Yet it can still access services on the management VLAN and the WAN VLAN, only because I want the maximum. I want it to be like a one-way mirror, you can think of it. So yeah, Anyway, those are the 3 VLANs that I use during the Hactic thing. I might gain more, which is when I would probably use the other ports on this patch panel. So yeah. Anyway, there's a lot of extra space. This is a 12U rack, so I've got plenty of potential for upgrades. So at the bottom I have a lone PowerEdge R610. I plan to get more servers in a short while, only because I'm a hardware fanatic and might as well. So my plan would be to get another R610 of the same specs and move all the storage on this R610 to an R410, which would have like 2 1TB drives, or maybe like 3 or 4 in them. And that would be, the R410 would be the storage server, and the 2 R610s would be the virtualization server, and then I would set up high availability in Proxmox with the storage server so that if one server goes down, the other server stays up. So yeah, anyway, for now I just have this single R610. So what this R610 does is, this is the main virtual host for all of the services for Hactic. So it runs the pfSense VM, it runs the Ubuntu Nginx VM, which is for the RTMP relay, and some other stuff like the UniFi controller and whatever else. So this has 2 Xeon E5540s in them. That's 2 quad cores, and each CPU has hyperthreading, so that's 16 threads and 8 cores in this server. I got it for like $250. If you just search R610 on eBay, you can find it. It's the top listing. It's got like a 700 sold or something crazy like that. Pretty much this is just a data center server that was liquidated at recently, where like a data center will liquidate all of its servers and buy new servers and then sell the old ones for really cheap because they just want to get rid of them, basically. This is definitely a powerful server. It's still really high performance. It's just that it doesn't, for the amount of power it uses, it's not worth it for data centers to use. But since I'm not using this 24/7, it really comes in handy. So yeah, it's a pretty simple R610. There's plenty of videos online about the R610. I'm not going to go in depth about it, but those 2 drives that are on top of each other, those are the 2 146 gig 10K SAS drives that came with the server, the eBay server. So that runs the actual, that's a RAID 1. It runs the Proxmox operating system, and it stores all of like the ISOs for installing disks. And then this middle drive here is a Crucial MX200. That's a 2.5-inch SATA 6 SSD. It's got 240 gigs of SSD storage, so that's where all the VMs are stored. And then on the drive on the right, that is a 500 gigabyte WD Blue to 2.5. Oh, alright. That's a 500 gig WD Blue 2.5-inch drive. And basically what I use it for is backups of the VMs. So say a VM goes wanky or it gets hacked or something, I can restore it from a backup. Or say the SSD fails, like the entire SSD, I can just put a new SSD in there and restore from the backups that are on this drive. So it's pretty much just the backup hard drive for all of the servers that are on this, all the VMs that are on this server. So we'll go over to the back now of the chassis, since we've pretty much covered everything here. Like I said before, I'm hoping to put more servers in, and I might put in a PowerEdge R5500, which is basically this T5500, except it's in a rack mount format. So that would allow me to add a capture card to it and a graphics card, and I could actually make a broadcast sort of encoding server that could be a permanent part of Hactic that I can use for future events, and that way I wouldn't have to carry a separate PC around. The only thing that I would be worried about is the weight. I want to try and keep the weight down as much as possible, only because there's a couple steps to go out through this room, and this is an apartment and stuff, and we don't exactly have a huge car and stuff. So I want to keep the weight as minimal as possible so that it is portable enough to actually bring it to Los Angeles. So yeah, I will take you out to the back. So here we go. Alright, so this is the back of the rack. You can see that it has fans on it and some vent holes. There's actually vent holes around the entire rack, but I figure that's pretty boring, so I wouldn't show you that. If we open the rack, the back door comes off, and there's actually, you can see over here, there's like sound dampening padding. So a nice thing about this rack also is that it's got fully sound dampening. So that allows me to keep the entire rack silent, because this R610 is very, very, very loud. So there's the R610 at the bottom. It's pretty basic. I just have the 4 network ports. I actually do use all 4. 3 for the 3 VLANs and 1 for the WAN. Yeah, right, yeah, there's actually 4 VLANs. Sorry, I meant to explain that. The reason I don't have the 4th on that patch panel is actually because it's the normal LAN, which you can access from that big 48 port switch, which is why it's not on the patch panel, because there's no reason to add it to the patch panel. Anyway, so at the bottom there's the 4 VLANs actually, because one of the VLANs is the WAN connection. So yeah, pretty simple, color-coded wires, even though it was never really meant to be color-coded. Those were actually just the only Ethernet cables I had. And it just has one power supply in it. That's pretty boring. But if we go up more, see if I can zoom out. There we go. There's actually just this one switch in the back. So this is a Dell PowerConnect 5448. Yeah, 5448. So this is a 48 port gigabit switch. It's kind of like a data center switch, enterprise switch. So it has 4 SFP ports on it and 48 ports of just normal gigabit. Actually, the 4 ports on the right are shared with the SFP. You can see that. So it's kind of like a 44 port switch plus, you know, like 4 combo ports. But either way, you can see it doesn't really matter because I don't really use this switch much. Well, I do use this switch. I don't use all the ports really, because I got this switch at DEF CON, and just for being the backbone switch and for having basically like unlimited features if you think about it. So yeah, that's a really nice switch. It definitely does the job. Up in the top left corner there are all the network ports, so I'll lift the camera up. Oof. And we'll go closer in because they're so dense. So you can see there's six sort of like Ethernet cables here, and what those are for are the patch panel in the front. So those first top 6 Ethernet ports go to the patch panel. That one white cord goes to the switch in the front, and then the 4 ports that are being used on the bottom go to the server. And then these fans are also powered and stuff. So yeah, that's actually pretty much the whole setup that I have right now. I'll probably post updates if I get new servers and if I get new hardware and stuff, because a lot has been changing recently. There's a build I might do for a post-production company where we would use like I think it's 11 R430s, Dell R430s, to create a render farm and stuff. So I'll keep you posted on all those projects that I've been working on. So yeah, remember, like if you liked it, dislike if you disliked it. I'm copying Linus Tech Tips. And subscribe if you want to see more videos that are hopefully going to be higher quality than they were before. So yeah, thanks for watching, and have a good day, or night, or morning, or evening.